Kat Salois, Director of Research at the McGregor Company. Today I'm out on the research farm, and the trial that I'm standing in front of is our fungicide trial. And maybe more specifically, not only are we looking at early season diseases, but this is also the trial where I have our flag to finish type treatments ready to go on, and some of those treatments have been put on. The reason that you see the striping is I have two different varieties. I have U of I Magic and Impress. The reason I have two of those varieties is Impress is really that yield horse. It is top in yield potential. Magic represents something that's susceptible to rust. It's also pretty sensitive to eye spot. Impress is sensitive to septoria. So they have a different complement of diseases. But as far as the flag leaf treatments, it's really what is something like Magic that has sort of a medium yield potential versus Impress that has a bigger yield potential. Getting a lot of questions on, okay, Kat, it's a dry year. Do we expect the flag leaf treatments to be as impactful as they have on other years? And we haven't had a year that's been as dry as this since I've been here. This is my 6th year. We had, I think it was 17, we had a really dry spring season, but our winter wheat was still pretty darn good. Really, the way that my head gets around what would I expect out of those flag leaf treatments in winter wheat in 2021 is, to me, the winter wheat is starting to act a bit like spring crop. Our spring wheat will routinely try to go through pollination and grain fill with no moisture and pretty hot. Really what we're gearing to do for our winter wheat is we've had very little moisture since the fall. That grain fill period, to me, is starting to act a whole lot like our spring crop. Really, probably one of the eye-openers as far as research plots go is how impactful things like Kickstarter and effective phosphorus management are. I wish I had a good example out here. This all has Kickstarter, but when we build bigger roots, we are seeing that in that the plant is handling this drought stress a whole lot better. What do I think about the flag leaf treatments this year? Well, the data that I'm having a really hard time not pointing to is if you look in your 2020 compendiums, I took the 4 years of work where R&T has looked at that flag leaf timing of fungicides plus fertility, and I broke it out by winter wheat and spring wheat. And that compendium page, I'm going to stick it up here real quick, but I will also link it. And so this is the overall, the winter and the spring. And the thing that really jumps out at you is when I break those crops up, we are averaging 8 to 10% yield gains on the winter wheat flag leaf applications. We are averaging 20% in spring wheat. How could that possibly be? 20%. I think a couple things are at play. So something to remember is that when we have dry conditions, our nutrient use efficiency really tanks. Nutrients have to be in soil solution for that plant to be able to take it up. Plants can't eat their nutrition. They have to drink their nutrition. So when you think about how that dry condition affects our nutrient use efficiency, even though we may be fertilized for a 120 bushel crop, we still have to take into account the lack of efficiency. I was just out at a Timothy plot earlier today, and it was remarkable how well something like Rally as a foliar feed was doing on that perennial crop. And I think that's part of what we're seeing in this data set is that as the conditions get dry, foliar feeding from the top down, when we have nutrients on the bottom up, really is an effective strategy to help that nutrient use efficiency. I think what also is at play is we know that plant health fungicides really help with heat and drought stress. Keep in mind that when you select a plant health fungicide, that fungicide will stimulate an upregulation in photosynthetic capability. What that in turn does is it encourages the plant to start sucking carbon and nitrogen from its root source, and it helps extend that flag leaf period. As a response to that, that temperature, the canopy temperature, is also brought down. And when we start looking at 90-degree weather that is predicted for this coming week, I believe that those plant health fungicides could have a great play in trying to get pollination to really help set the florets that we're getting. So what kind of yield potential are we sitting on? I'm trying to set my papers down. But in the trial, I went and grabbed a few heads. Magic is a little bit earlier than Impress. So what you're seeing in that stem elongation is that's probably 3 days in maturity. So when I pulled the heads off, that very last internode is what breaks off. So this is magic. And really when I sit here and count these heads, I'm averaging about 14 florets per head. When I look at Impress, so you can see Impress is a little bit bigger head, I'm averaging probably 18 florets per head. We want to be targeting somewhere in that 40 to 50 grains per head. Now we need to sit here and count a few awns. So let's grab one from Magic. In Magic, when I'm looking at those awns, we're averaging 3 that are really looking good with a potential 4th. And on Impress, 3 look really strong, a very likely 4th. If we do kind of quick math that I can do in my head and talk, 15, and if we get 3 heads, that's going to be north of 60. And really, I guess our target is 45 to 55. So that means if we could just put all 3 of those kernels on per spikelet, that our yield potential would be sitting pretty good. And then if we pick up some rains to be able to capture that kernel weight, even better. So back to the flag leaf fungicides, really what this is showing me is that we have the spikes and we have the florets, and if we can pollinate and actually take these fertile florets forward, that our yield potential in winter wheat, like quick math says that we're trending about 10% below what we were last year. But I do think it's going to be really important to figure out how we can pollinate what we have. So that was a pretty long explanation for go back and look at some of the data on the flag leaf fungicide plus foliar nutrition in spring wheat. We were averaging 20% over the last 4 years. I don't know that that's going to directly translate into winter wheat, but to me, the drought condition that we're in, the heat that we're likely to get next week, starts making our winter wheat act like spring wheat. I feel like those applications are still going to pay even in a drought year. Hope to see everybody at field tours. Those are going to be happening the first 2 weeks in June. Talk with your account managers on more information.